Greetings, EXSEED attendees, and welcome to Phase 1 webinar. This asynchronous video recorded webinar will be available to you today until September 8. Please use this presentation and the slides for your reference. If you need a quick go-to, aside from going through our resources in Canvas under assignments, but feel free to go through this presentation as well. We will start with applying foundational elements of Introduction to PBL. At the end of our session, we should be able to do that and implement PBL into the classrooms and to bring out the internet connectivity between PBL and integrated STEM in planning and design. Now, what is project-based learning? Project-based learning is a systematic teaching method bringing in the three components in learning: 21st century skills, inquiry process structured, and learning task, which is where assessment is, reflection, and some of your rubrics, quizzes, and tests. Driving question. Now for this project, let's remember how we as EXSEED educators can design integrated STEM learning experiences that build on learner capacity for success through PBL within the framework of mission-focused learning. That is the difference in this PBL. Many of you have said over the week of EXSEED, oh, we've done that already. We pretty much do that. We've done that for years, which is fine, which is great, and our NAD curriculum is almost set up that way for our small schools to be able to do that. But this is the piece that's different with PBL World, is to have that purpose and service learning origin in our projects. As we look through the traditional unit that we've done in the past, whether a while ago or recently, we can moderate towards the PBL learning unit with these pink boxes. You can interchange them along the way after you launch your project between lectures, research, workshops, and in between you can insert your benchmarks, your standards, your goals, and also reflect and assess for yourself, with your students, as a whole, as a school, whatever is required and suggested for you to do this now school year, with the end goal in mind to culminate event and presentation at the end of the month, at the end of the semester, quarter, or year. Now, making sure that we have the essential elements of project-based design is important. After this, we have the project-based teaching. But here in the design, we need to always follow to make sure that we have student voice and choice. That is important, along with the rest of it, counterclockwise or clockwise, as you look at this to remind yourself when you're planning. Then in teaching practices, majority of you have already, or almost all of you have already been following this method in your teaching practices. Building the culture seems to be the unique part of PBL, in which sometimes you have those days where, man, I can't do anything in this unit today. It's just not, nothing's jiving. Well, if you follow the culture of how to make sure your students are getting along in team building or in peer-to-peer mentoring, and we're going to talk about this more later, or building the culture and observing and researching, all the elements for PBL, you can always take a step back in that aspect, because it gets their mind going. It gets their mindset to be towards reaching the goal in mind. And that's the great part about PBL. Of course, doing projects is something we've all pretty much have done or are doing. And it could be a series of projects in your PBL. But this is just a reminder of doing projects versus PBL. here at Implement PBL into Classrooms can be viewed as how to do that with a multi-age classroom, a multi-grade classroom, a one-subject teacher classroom, or a homeroom. Reminding us here with the traditional unit versus PBL unit module. Personally coming from a one-room school teacher setting, which can apply to a one-subject teacher school setting. When planning your PBL unit, I would categorize and inspire and lead. I would put them into two different columns because when you're planning for the school year, say you have one third grade class, but we all know that the students have different abilities and different levels per se in the way that they learn and in the way that they are in their academics. So I categorize them by that. For myself personally, I don't tell the students. And I also categorize them by ability levels. So I know how the group or the grouping can be much more effective in the classroom. Sometimes I have different groups for different things. Or in a one subject teacher classroom, it could also be the same way. Then we go into subject interest, what the kids like, and what's a hot topic. Under Inspire and Lead, you can see where it says Family and Community Hot Topics. And that is also something where I know generates interest from the students. Something they went through over the summer, something they're going through in their community, so on and so forth. And then, of course, the timeline that you need to execute your PBL, your EXSEED PBL unit. And of course, under Inspire and Lead, which is where you already scaffold into what you want them to learn, going towards your curriculum themes throughout the year, if it's seasonal, if it's just a two-part idea, and your goals and projects, and of course, the final product. Now, with all that is your culture in the classroom. And that's the unique part about PBL. Many of you have said this past June, oh, I've done PBL. I do projects already, which is great. But bringing out the classroom culture in PBL is what makes this unique. With that said, the four bold bullets that I have here to share with you is that in your classroom culture, to make sure that they observe and seek evidence in whatever the project idea is about, is how you as a teacher would do that when you're observing them and you're seeking the need and the inspiration that's needed from you or your guest speakers or the video or a field trip or whatever the case may be. And with all that, it brings in a growth mindset. Many times at schools that I hear that are doing PBL, even students themselves say, well, it's a different way of learning. I'm not sure I like it, but I do like that I'm doing projects in my PBL. A lot of times it's a give and take because it's stretching yourselves to something that you're not familiar with or stretching yourself to something new that is research-based and effective, which goes into peer-to-peer mentorship, where students know that they have to learn how to work together because it's a real life skill. It's a real world skill. And leading that to their student voice and choice. When you've set up your classroom culture, because some teachers have said, oh, I really can't do PBL this semester, but I can do it next semester. So then they use the classroom culture tips or something they've already done, which is the great thing about PBL, that they're preparing the students for PBL. And that's how you shift your classroom to that, for that, to support a student-centered, inquiry-based approach. All these tips here on this list allows you to allow them to have anytime, anywhere learning. You bring in a guest speaker, you watch a video, you do an experiment. They all know that there's a connection to everything that they do and that there's a purpose, which includes your project path in planning for this. You follow up with these questions. What students think about? What is this project going to have them do? How can they apply what they're doing to their work or to their project? All these questions can be woven into your PBL unit. And how teachers support inquiry is a guideline as well when you're launching your project, and to make sure that you're following along the timeline. And for those of you who do backwards planning and you start with the standards and outcomes, here is a reminder to where you can find the elementary standards and the secondary standards for the NAD. And there are those of you who are following the NGSS and implementing that in your PBL unit, which is fine. And the last section here for review of PBL is the interconnectivity in STEM with planning and design. When you're doing STEM in planning and design, you have your STEM activities, you have your STEM simulations, you have your STEM writing in Bible, in language arts, in reading. That all can be integration of STEM, which is adding on other subjects and disciplines into your planning. The characteristics of STEM PBL can be some of these 9 suggestions: where students are and how it's broken down, and how the projects are involved with the other subjects in your classroom. This is a great way to reflect for yourself here when you're generating your project idea. Where is the flow of my STEM PBL and the natural integration of other subjects? And what standards do I teach and assess throughout? And what should my students know at the end? And what is my plan to develop this EXSEED STEM PBL project? Well, the STEM practices here we have break down to where it could lead to the subject that you're teaching. For example, there is a history teacher that said, I'm not really doing STEM in my classroom. And I said, well, I know a student in your classroom, and he said that you guys use a green screen when you're in character. The students choose historical characters, and they use the green screen to do their narration and choose the background to where that historical character came from. And she said, yeah, I guess that is a technology integration, which is STEM. And so that's for the one subject teacher. That was something for her in which she already did, which ended up moving towards using QR codes so parents can see the video of their child outside of school or somewhere else. Going back to your planning with driving question, this is a great rubrics to be able to see that and to make sure that your driving question is a challenging problem, and it's also a question that's framed by here open-ended, framed in and open-ended, understandable, and it's aligned with learning goals. Requirements, we have our overview project of completion here in this chart, and this is in Canvas in the syllabus. So this is just a reminder for you to make sure that you see how the project is being broken up into 3 phases. And this here is really, these bullets are here really for us to help you along the way. And the detailed course schedule, of course. We also have what's here? We have the deadline for the grant here, September 15, but we have a couple webinars. Oh, I guess we only have one. We have one more webinar to help you along. So I would highly suggest that you fill out your information. You can find it in the grant toolkit in Canvas, and this is optional, but you can find it in there. And make sure that you go to where it says EXSEED Mini Grant, and then you can also go to the assignments, and that's where you'll find more information, in-depth information about it, the learning objectives, purpose, and then of course you have the template here, which can be, your grant proposal can be the actual EXSEED project that you're working on, or it can be something separate, completely different from it. One teacher wanted to save the sparrows at their school and ended up doing a bird feed, but she was awarded a grant on Ozobots. So it wasn't related to anything, to each other, but you know, that's how she worked her second grade classroom. So we went over the review of PBL, reminding you of the pink boxes of ideas in your PBL learning unit. And we went over the contents, some of the contents, the overview in the syllabus, which is in your Canvas, and in your grant toolkit. This is your Phase 1 webinar with EXSEED, and this is Charity with you, and thank you so much for joining us. And this presentation will be available to you, and I highly suggest that you type in your questions and your comments below and go back to it, screenshot things that you need. But like I said, all these resources are in Canvas. Thank you and have a good rest of the school year, and I'll see you in between. Now as we move on to review EXSEED course